You know when your favorite app suddenly changes a feature you love? Or when you dive into the privacy settings and it's just so complicated? Well, have you ever wondered why that happens? It turns out our entire digital world is being shaped by these, well, invisible forces. There are all these competing interests pulling the strings right behind the screen. So, in this explainer, we're going to pull back that curtain. We'll kick things off by asking who's really in control. Then, we'll meet all the key players, the stakeholders. After that, we'll look at what happens when their interests collide, which, spoiler, they always do. We'll also explore the really tricky art of finding a balance. And then, most importantly, we'll wrap it all up by talking about why any of this actually matters to you.
All right, first up, who actually controls your tech? Because let me tell you, the answer goes way, way beyond just the company name on the app.
So let's just get right to it with a big question. Think about the apps on your phone, the software you use every day. Who do you think is really calling the shots? Who decides what those apps can and can't do? It's not as simple as you might think. The answer? Well, it involves a whole cast of characters. All right, so let's meet this cast, shall we? This brings us to the stakeholders. These are the real players in the tech game. And trust me, every single one of them has their own agenda and their own source of power. Okay, this table pretty much lays out the entire battlefield. You've got us, right, the end users. What do we want? Privacy, security, stuff that works well and doesn't cost a fortune. Our power? Well, it's our trust and the absolute chaos we can cause with backlash when that trust is broken. Then you've got the company and its investors who are all about profitability and financial returns. They're the ones making the decisions and holding the purse strings. But wait, there's more. You've got employees on the inside who can act as an ethical check, sometimes even becoming whistleblowers. Then there's the government, drawing the legal lines in the sand. And finally, you have society at large, shaping public opinion. It is a very, very crowded room, and things can get pretty tense. And you know what happens in a crowded room with everyone wanting something different, right? Conflict. It's inevitable. And that brings us right to the core tension in all of tech. What happens when these interests collide? And this is just a perfect example of a classic showdown. I mean, think about the whole famous battle between Apple and the FBI. On one side, you have users, and yeah, in this case, the company itself, who want strong encryption. It's pretty fundamental, right? We want our data, our messages, to be private and secure. But then, on the other side, you've got the government demanding data access. They want what's often called a backdoor so they can help with investigations and national security. And boom, right there, you have a direct head-on collision. Both sides have a point, but their interests are completely at odds. So, okay, with all these different forces pulling in opposite directions, how does anyone ever make a decision? That's the million-dollar question, and it leads us right into the art of the balancing act. How do you make what we call a responsible decision? So let's just put a clear definition on that term we've been using. A stakeholder. It's really just any person or group who's affected by a decision or who can affect that decision. And here's the crucial part. Making a truly ethical choice means you have to consider all of these different viewpoints, not just the ones with the most money or the loudest voice.
So, our responsible decision isn't about one side just winning and everyone else losing. It's not this zero-sum game of profit versus privacy. No, it's more like a constant, really difficult negotiation. You see companies setting up internal review boards, these ethical frameworks, just to try and weigh these choices. They're constantly asking, okay, what are the trade-offs here? If we crank up the security, does that make the app a pain to use? If we collect this data for a cool new feature, what's the absolute worst-case scenario for how it could be misused? It's like they're walking this ethical tightrope every single day, just trying to find some kind of middle ground that doesn't make everyone angry.
And all of this brings us to what I think is the most important question of all. So what? Why does any of this matter? Let's bring this whole conversation right back to your own digital life and the world we all live in. Look, you are a major stakeholder in this whole game. Don't ever forget that. These decisions, they directly impact your data privacy and your digital security. They literally determine how easy your tools are to use and even how much you pay for them. And it goes even bigger than that. It affects whether you can trust the companies you deal with, and it has these huge ripple effects on society. Everything from public discourse to the crazy spread of misinformation. And this is so important. Never forget the power that you have in all this. Because the truth is, when a company decides to just ignore what its users want, it almost always backfires, big time. It leads to massive public backlash and the loss of the one thing they can't buy, your trust. So let's leave it with this thought. We know that users can speak up for themselves. We know that companies and investors have incredibly loud voices, right? But in this incredibly complex balancing act that's shaping our entire digital world, it all boils down to one final, really crucial question. Who speaks for society?